Kaput means deer. And what would happen is First Nations people would hide behind trees or rocks near deer trails, and then they would have spears. And earlier, Maiya was probably talking about camas. Camas was traded with the interior people. Camas was traded as far as Mexico and as far as Alaska. So it's an economic staple to the First Nations people. And in the interior, the First Nations would trade obsidian, which is a volcanic glass. It can be sharper than steel if it's done properly. And we would harvest deer with those heads. And the hooves would be used for regalia. Same with the antlers, same with the hide, and the sinew would be used to tie things together. So every part of the deer pretty much would have been used. Any questions?
Aerial ecosystems for those who couldn't navigate that sort of terrain. So it was very considerate and a practice of the day so that the whole community's needs were met and not just one family, not just one person. Everybody's needs were met. My late grandfather, West Modeste, he would say that prior to colonization and settlement, there was virtually no crime at all that happened in our community. And the main reason for that being is because everybody's needs were always met. There were even families in our communities that would store extra food for people. And people in the community knew that they could go to this place and harvest. They could go to, they used to have underground storage, like a root cellar that would be dug into the ground. There would be extra food in there as well. My late great grandfather, Abraham Seymour, from Stamanis, he used to have one. And my grandma said that he would have barrels and barrels and barrels of dried fish. And that was open to community members to come and take from if they needed it. So everybody's needs were met. And I always like to bring that up because, you know, we don't live in that type of world today. You know, a lot of people are greedy and take more than they need. So it's really good to share that. It's a good lesson that, you know, we don't need to take more. And just a beautiful demonstration of taking care of each other and being a true community. So Garryoke ecosystems are really, really important places. And the sad thing is there's only 5% left in near natural condition. So 95% of these ecosystems are endangered and at risk of going extinct. And again, a lot of our staple foods exist here. So what does that tell us? To me, I don't think that's a coincidence. You know, I think that is a calculated move as to why we don't have as much of these ecosystems anymore. You know, for the longest time, Indigenous people have been excluded from our hunting and harvesting grounds. Our traditional foods are being taken away. And so it's really important that we take care of these spaces and that we find, you know, a passion and find, you know, a reason to protect them.
And
so I just wanted to bring that up.
We also have cedar here, which is our healing medicine. Cedar releases something called negative ions, and negative ions are actually being pumped into skyscrapers because they increase the morale and the motivation of the workers. And a fun fact is that negative ions are released near moving bodies of water and whenever you're walking in the woods. So whenever you come to the woods, it is quite literally healing. The Xwaaqw'um, which is the merganser duck, the feathers would be gathered for regalia, and the meat would be harvested, obviously, to eat. Stinging nettle was put at the base of creeks, and we would take stinging nettle and turn it into nets. Now, stinging nettle has a high elasticity, like an elastic. It can be stretched, and high tensile strength, which means it can be stretched without breaking. Xwaaqw'um. Now, you can't say if you weren't to have that break in there, when you say Xwaaqw'um, it means to pee. But Xwaaqw'um means clam. So it's kind of funny if you've been walking on the beach, you'll step near a clam and it'll pee on you. That's my guess of where that came from. And we also, I won't be able to say that name unfortunately, but we also have, originally the surveyor said that there were 7 different types of salmon that were in our creeks, but now I think we've only seen 3. There's that, and this is a depiction painted by Brianna, who is a wonderful biologist who we've worked with, and she's taught us a lot. Something that would happen is First Nations people would take rocks, or maybe even those that volcanic glass, that obsidian that was traded for camas, and that would be put on a spear. The First Nations people would hide behind a rock near a deer trail, and they would wait for the deer to go by, and then they would harvest or get the deer. The women would take care of the camas fields, and Maiya earlier today said that her grandpa said that this mountain would have been purple with all of those camas flowers. In the space you can see that cedar is being collected here, so not only is it a spiritual medicine, but it also has antimicrobial and antibacterial properties. So that means that food can be stored in there, or you can process food without it being contaminated. That's why cedar is so special to us. And we would also make watertight baskets by weaving cedar. So we could take cedar or other things like water and fish like that. We would take hats to protect us from the sun and capes to protect us from the sun as well. And here is the merganser being caught in the stinging nettle nets that I was talking about earlier. And up here is where we see a man. He would have been using a different spear to catch fish. This is the only thing that I can say. The spears to catch fish would have had something more or less like this. So it would go in and then catch the fish and be easier to pull out.
A leister?
I believe it's called a leister.
Yeah.
Now who's ready to keep on going? Yeah, let's go.
All right.
Unwanted pests or invasive seeds, you can plant cleaver, and it'll climb, but it'll also catch, because it's really sticky.
Yeah.
It'll catch invasive seeds that are trying to blow into your garden, or bugs that you don't really want in there, like aphids.
Right.
So yeah, cleaver.
Cleaver.
So that was down here. So I can just imagine my great grannies and aunties and everybody just sitting here at the base of the creek shucking the clams, getting our meals ready, preparing. So this is a very special spot as well. I love to point this out again. Kaylin made me say it, but this is the only natural creek that we have left at Xwaaqw'um. So this creek at one time held 7 species of fish. Now we have 1 that is returning. And the reason that this creek is so important is because when we look at it, there's plants all along the creek, kind of shading the creek. Not only does that help control the temperature, but the fish need a place to hide away from predators. So the roots and the foliage that hangs over the streams helps protect the baby fish and make it, give it a higher chance of survival as it tries to go up and spawn. So really important that we have this ecosystem. And at Stakea Learning Society, we are actively trying to restore the stream banks and the wetlands up above so that we have more water in these creeks for the fish to return. When you think about it, it's really sad to think about, but it is a reality. When we move and divert creeks, the salmon don't know where to go. So if there's a salmon returning to the same stream, same creek every year, and then all of a sudden that's not there, the salmon doesn't know where to go. It stays in the eelgrass usually, and that's where it dies. It doesn't get to spawn. So we need these creeks to stay where they are. We need to restore them. I see an endangered butterfly right there. Oh my gosh, beautiful timing. So yeah, it's really, really important that we take care of these spaces. Not only because of, there's the value and the archaeology that could be done here, but more than anything, we just want a healthy environment for our fish to return to.
Maiya. I'll attend.
Dairy oak trees are in near natural conditions, and dairy oak ecosystems inhabit 500 different species that are pretty much at risk. So the Gary Oak ecosystems are something that Maiya focuses on the restoration for bringing back plants that live in Gary Oak ecosystems, and so that we can hopefully bring things like bugs and other mammals back to these Gary Oak ecosystems.
Eat another one. Got her. 2 thumbs up? Yeah. Okay, there we go. 2 thumbs up.
Exactly. So you could always tell if somebody was coming in, if there were enemies coming in to raid the women or the resources. And then you could also tell if you're having visitors coming in. So there'd be kind of watchers, you know, just up a little higher than we are, watching the narrows, making sure that we're protected. So the people that were out on these points would light fires to let people know inland if there were enemies coming. So then the women and children would go far up into the mountain. So my late Papa Wes, he said, in this shape, if you see this shape anywhere you go, you know that there's a village there. Because of that very reason, it's a very protective shape to live in. Because you can have people at the points who are letting you know. So one of the ways that Xwaaqw'um would let people know whether they were coming to hurt or to harm, there were songs for that. So Xwaaqw'um at one point in time had over 15,000 people in our village. We were once the biggest village there is in Canada. So prior to colonization, my grandparents said that there would be 5,000 canoes of Xwaaqw'um all going together up to the Fraser River, which is on the mainland. We have a village, a Xwaaqw'um village on the Fraser River called Xwaaqw'um, and we're in the process of actually winning a court battle to get rights to that village site again. So Xwaaqw'um has always been very large, but the reason I bring that up is if you could imagine 5,000 canoes pulling up and all singing the same song, the Welcome Paddle song, and the Xwaaqw'um still sings that song today. So if you've had the privilege of seeing the Xwaaqw'um perform, you've heard that song that is as old as time. And you can imagine 5,000 canoes coming in and all singing that to let people know that they're not there to hurt. They're not there to harm people. I always think that's very powerful. That's amazing, because it's hard for me to picture 5,000 canoes all together. So the reason that we'd go up to the Fraser is to trade, and it was a trading hub for a lot of us. But one of the main resources that we brought up there was camas, dried camas bulb or fresh camas bulb. And it was women who primarily took care of the camas meadows. We have such a deep relationship with this plant, so much so that there's a butterfly that has evolved alongside us. So that's called the island marble. So the camas diggers, the women who dug the camas in these meadows, would leave the hole in the ground after the camas was dug. And that butterfly would come in and lay its larva. And there was an understanding that they knew that butterfly would then pollinate that meadow and take care of the future generations. So we had this understanding and this reciprocal relationship with this butterfly. And now this butterfly has been thought to be extinct for the last 100 years. And how long have we been excluded from these spaces? Over 100 years. So there's a direct correlation in my eyes as to why we don't have this butterfly, because it used to be here. It used to be all over the southern Vancouver Islands, but it no longer is. But was found on the San Juan Islands, which is not too far away. So to me, it's really, really important to take care of these spaces and to remember that sort of history and why it's important. We have a long, long line of camas caretakers. So women took care of the camas. It was the responsibility of men to cook the camas. So they would usually take it away from the women, take it to a different site and cook it, and then bring it back to eat. So it's quite a balanced, what's the right word? Process, I guess, of masculine and feminine both taking part in the camas, in that plant. Up in the Fraser River, we would usually trade for mountain goat wool for the camas and obsidian. So have you ever seen those black arrowheads? They're a shiny stone, those black arrowheads. Yeah, so that's called obsidian. That is not found in our territory naturally. So every arrowhead that you see here has been traded up in the Fraser. So when you think about that, that's really cool. We actually got to meet somebody from the Chilcotin territory, the chief of the Chilcotin right now. And we were talking about different trade routes and different things like that. And he was talking about how he has a river in his territory, and it's black with obsidian. And he said that's where most of their obsidian comes from in their territory. And he had the knowledge too of trading for different resources with the camas and the obsidian and the mountain goat wool. And so it was really cool to connect with him and talk about that. And you know, to even think about that our ancestors have exchanged hands before, have traded together. And then here we are again, exchanging knowledge, exchanging teachings and stories. It was really, really cool to be present for that. So again, we're in a very, very rich territory. There used to be an abundance of camas here. There used to be a little house here as well. And we believe that there was a caretaker of the camas meadow here, and it doesn't exist anymore because camas needs disturbance in order to survive. It needs somebody to come in and either burn or cut it down, and really just to take care of it, because it has relied on us since time immemorial. So now, since colonization, as we're getting excluded from our territories, the camas is disappearing. So it's really important that we revitalize it. My main goal is to get you guys learning how to harvest the camas, how to prepare it, how to preserve it, and feed elders traditional meals. That is one of my biggest goals in taking care of these gardens. So again, it's really important. And I just wanted to share a bit about that while we're here and looking at it. Another thing I wanted to note is you can see how big this tree is here. And it's a lot bigger than those ones that you see up on the bluff there. So these trees, really interestingly, these trees could be the exact same age as this big one here. But they're different sizes because this here is in what's called a deep soil site. So there's a lot more soil available right here than there is up on that bluff. So there's lots of moss and a very little small layer of dirt that those trees can grab onto. But Garry oaks are really unique in that way that they don't need a lot of soil to survive. So again, those could be, 200 years old, and we wouldn't know that because it's so small. It could be the same age as this big tree or older. So it's really fascinating to me that they can exist there. And Garry oak are so resilient in a way. Yeah.
In Montague, there's a yew tree that's like 1,500 years old, and it's like tiny.
Yeah.
It's like small. It's very small. They're like very tiny, minuscule, and it looks old too. It's like the bark and the wood is all like twisted and you've seen a yew tree. It looks pretty cool. Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. And the reason for that, the yew tree has such a hard wood. It is one of the hardest woods. So yew tree would have been used to make arrows as well because it's so hard. But the reason it's a hard wood is because the rings in a tree, they grow so close together that they're so much stronger. They're a lot more compact than, when you cut a tree open and you see the rings that are pretty spaced apart. Those rings will also tell you how much water was available to that tree in the year. Yeah. So each ring, how far apart they are, will tell you how much water was available in that year.
Cottonwood.
But the yew tree, its rings are so close together, it's so compact that it's super, super hard. And it's actually the chemist digging tools were made out of yew wood. And same with arrows and a lot of different tools that were needed to be a lot stronger than regular wood. And again, they can be like 1,500 years old and tiny because of how close their rings are. So yeah, yew trees are really, really cool too, and they almost look
Digging
like
tools. So to dig things like cedar roots, which would be used for other decorations and hats, and also for digging things like clams out in the bay. The yew tree was used as a spade. So the end would be turned into a spike and then it would be used for digging. But also the deeper part of the tree could be used for bows. Because this tree could be anywhere between 200 and 500 years old, this guy that doesn't look too big, the fibers grow really slow. So that means it's going to be really hard. And that means it can bend and go back really easily. Now also, war canoe paddles were made from the base of the yew tree as well. When wars would happen on the water, it would be naval wars. So we would have 12 men coming out and then they would have big rocks that they would throw at each other to crush boats and stuff like that.
One more thing to point out, this here, mock orange, very, very, very strong wood.
Right.
But this here looks like the perfect branch that we would want to harvest. So we'd cut it off and see this natural bend that it has?
Wow.
Not only that, but these are actually used, if you keep bending and you heat it up, it can be turned into a ring. So those rings are actually used in what we call Xwaaqw'um. So that's mask dancing. Very, very sacred part of my culture. And it's very sacred in the way that it's passed down through the patrilineal line, mask dancing. The mask will get passed, the physical mask will get passed to the son of whoever holds the mask. So my family holds the sawbill mask, but there is a mask that comes from Xwaaqw'um, and it's called the Xwaaqw'um. So it'll have the merganser, the mask is about this big, and it'll have the merganser on it, and then there's a bunch of feathers. So the mask dancers hold this ring, and it has clamshells on it, and they go around and they use that as their instrument as they're going along, and it's a way to cleanse the space. Those types of sounds in our culture cleanse space. Bells, the clams, will clear the way. Xwaaqw'um, clear the way. So this plant here, the mock orange, is used for the mask dancers. So I remember Papa Ron, he shared this with me maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I still keep it in my head. I know the plant still, I know what's needed to make the ring, and he said one day you'll be called upon to go collect this. So I want you to note this plant, don't forget it. So this here, the mock orange, is used for our mask dancers for the ring.